Welcome to Rally the Tartans, where ancient echoes rise with every throw, where clans gather, steel meets stone, and the past walks beside us. We're lifting culture, throwing tradition, and celebrating the warriors, the history, and the heart of the Highland Games. I'm your host, Michael Paul Wolfgar Lewis. Let's rally the Tartans. They say the strength of a tradition is measured not in the hands of its elders, but in the grip of the young ones ready to carry it forward. And today's episode is going to be pretty spicy. When we started this week, I had a whole plan for the episode, and then a very spicy Facebook post by a 20-year veteran in this sport popped up. I believe it was Wednesday night or Thursday night, and it made me redo everything. This morning, early on November the 15th, when I should have been dropping the episode, I had to start re-recording the whole entire thing for everyone. Here in a little while, you're going to sit with me and Dave Summers, also known as Butterbean or Bean to a lot of folks in the Highland Games on the East Coast. What a fantastic guy, hilarious. His meme game is fire and on point if you've ever had a conversation with him. But I think it plays into this whole youth conversation that we're going to have in our cultural segment at the end. Because to me, it's something that I feel has been missing. I am a high school track and field coach, so it is important to me. My whole purpose for coaching is to just share my passion of throwing. Of course, they're a little bit more, Olympic style, obviously. They wear jerseys and they get into a circle and step up to a toe board instead of our box and a trig. We throw a stone, they throw a shot put. But it's kind of a very blended world that we have. I know when I first started training, I watched a lot of Olympic shot putters to actually learn how to spin because, to be honest, I was horrible. Still am, in my opinion, but we're getting there. And I think it's important, that we make sure that we are not just carrying the torch of our culture, but we're passing it on to the youth. Now, what does that mean? Obviously, we have 1,700 different Scottish organizations out there. We don't have one governing body. We don't have rules that are the same across the board. Running joke, a lot of folks in my circle is Danny Webster, the rebel architect, and his movement to wing trig. Little does everybody know, he may be moving away from the wing trig next year. He's trying new things. He's being innovative in a sport that is centuries old. And I think that's super important for all of us to understand. This is a living, breathing sport. Now, there's a lot of problems with the sport, and I don't like to bring up problems myself unless I have a solution. That's kind of the important thing to do. If you see a problem, I just bring it up. I'm just complaining and whining about it. I don't like to hear other people whine and complain, so I and not to do it unless I have some sort of solution. My concern with the Highland Games is visibility. How do we make it a sexy sport? Right? Football. Turn it on every week. I'm a football coach. I love it. Highlight of my life. Being able to go out there and coach young men. Well, really, they're boys becoming young men. Freshman football coach. A very pivotal time in their life where they're learning a lot about who they are and what their character is. And I see that in the Highland Games today. And to be honest, the post that Dave made spoke to me. It really did. I hate to use the phrase daddy ball, but I mean, it's out there. It's out there in your little leagues, your AAU teams, and everything that that is sports. Are there cliques and crews in Highland Games? Well, of course there is. Absolutely. Why wouldn't there be? Right? So I've seen it. Now, I'm not here. I don't need any more friends. I have a wonderful friend group. I don't. I'm not saying I don't want friends. I always accept people. I'm super nice to anybody. Um, but I'm not looking for friends. I'm looking for connections to my heritage and my family that's currently alive. And we talk about the ones who have passed. I'm not here because I want to be a pro or I want to be a champion. Would I love to go to the Masters World Champion? Yeah, one day when I earn it. Is it going to break my heart if I never get invited? Not at all. I'll probably get invited to judge maybe one day. Who knows? But that's what I'm talking about here. And I think that's what you're going to hear in our conversation with Dave. It's going to be kind of amazing to hear what his recap is on, what his opinions are. He's been in the game for 20 years. He's going to recap his frustrations that have been building for the last 5 to 10 years in the games, which is what we need. We need to have honest conversations and bring it to the table. Stop sitting around like a bunch of gossiping kids and face the trouble head on and figure out exactly what we're doing as a sport. This is a sport, man. This is the original strongman sport, and of course it's grown into what you see today. Obviously, we don't have, the publicity that Hathor has, or Brian Shaw, or Eddie Hall, or all those guys. Uh, those are current. I can start mentioning some guys from the '90s, but half the kids listening probably won't understand that. But that's what we're talking about. And that's what we're going to get into. Now, of course, I definitely want to do a little recap about the games, and we'll be glad to jump into this a little bit after I talk to Dave about the youth and the future of this sport and what it's going to be like. So just bear with me. Let's jump into our little recap because there have been some fantastic games to end the season. And that's it. We're at the end of the season. If anybody has followed along with the football coaching, unfortunately, we lost in our regional championship game. It was heartbreaking. Those seniors have given a lot, and unfortunately, they don't get to continue with the team next year. But I honestly believe we are on a collision course to a state championship within the next 4 years. Maybe that's just because I believe in our head coach and his mission and everything he does. Dude is fantastic. He's an amazing organization leader. He's an amazing football coach. He's a defensive guy. I'm a defensive guy, so we click a little bit. But we'll get into the Highland Games and get off of football just for a second. But think about that, guys. When we're rallying back together, think about what we're doing for the future, for the youth of our sport, of all sports, of everybody that we come in contact with. Let's talk about some games. Now, November has went by pretty quick. For you, for me, I don't know. I have 3 teenage daughters. I have 3 birthdays in the fourth quarter. Actually 4 birthdays if you count my wife. So it is a super busy time. Football season for me is, ramping up to the end, coming to the end. And throw season starts. Our indoor practice starts now, and our season starts in January. So from one sport right to another. And just like the Highland Games, we've had a few big games to end with. Wonderful Deltona Highland Games has just happened on November the 8th. Clover Highland Games is a lightweight championship. They also have a regular games. They did throw a backyard games out in Las Vegas. Charleston, South Carolina had their Scottish games on the 1st of the month. And the Oklahoma City IHGF National Championship went down in Oklahoma City. And then down in Gulfport, Mississippi, they had Highlands and Islands. That was the 8th and the 9th. So a lot of things going on. I believe there was also one in Texas. I'll have to double check. Salado Scottish Gathering, which is also a Highland Games, and then the Battle of Sulphur Creek down in Alabama. So we've had quite a few. I just want to touch on a couple. One of my favorites is Deltona. The folks that run that are near and dear to my heart, so I like to talk about them often. And it's kind of the same old. Uh, the Burnett family obviously has some fantastic throwers, and Brent took first. But two shout outs to two of my favorite guys in Florida, DJ Brooks and Al Pascal. Uh, I got to throw with. I think that was our first game for all of us at the 2023 Central Florida Highland Games. Those guys were a part of a throwing group down in Tampa, Florida, the Tampa area. The Celtic Strong Throwing Group ran by the Andrews brothers. David Andrews, rest in peace, you legend, and Brian Andrews. Great guys, great folks. And I believe both of those guys are a part of the Foundation for Scottish Athletics, which we'll talk about one of their events coming up in the later segment here. So, huge shout out to them. Their master's classes in Florida are always huge. I believe there was 11. You know, I've seen those stacked out to 15 before. Had a pretty good showing for lightweights. Had over 6 folks in the lightweight division. Patrick Brown took first. And they also had some adaptive athletes out there. So that to me is super important. So huge shout out to Deltona, Florida. If you've never been, get it on your calendar for next season. It's a wonderful time. Just a great atmosphere. Now, as far as the big one goes, you know, I would, of course, I would want to talk about Charleston, their Scottish games there, but I don't have a full list of everybody who competed, so I do apologize. But the Oklahoma City games, the national championship there, what a fantastic showing that was. That's a big one out in the, I guess you call Oklahoma the Midwest or the gateway to the West. But they did have some pro women out, or a pro woman. Um, Jamisa Milton, to put on a show. Had a stacked class of amateur women out there, and um, you know, just kind of put on an overall really good game. Shout out to Mr. Seth. He was one of the juniors, and since this is the episode where we're talking about youth, I love it. I want to see more. Obviously, I hope that in 2026 the athletic directors all around the country can continue to grow the juniors. I want to say this, but also offer help. All right. If you need help reaching out to local throwing clubs at high schools or whatever it may be in whatever region from coast to coast, let me know. I'm a high school coach. I will reach out to that local high school coach and say, hey, this is what I do. And I always invite my kids out to throw, because if they like the Highland Games, they're going to be training for the Highland Games, right? Our off season is that summer and fall. There's a lot of games in summer and fall for the youth to get involved. So we should be having 5, 10 athletes on the field for the juniors out there. That's how we pass this torch. The youth are the next ones to break the records, right? Of course, you go to Florida and you're going to have 15 masters athletes. You know, you go to one of the bigger cities, you're going to have 15 lightweight athletes. The juniors are what we need to see. We need to grow the junior games. It's a personal mission of mine. I every year I invite all of my athletes out to our local games that we have every year. Fortunately, our ones in the spring we can't go to because we're obviously in season. You know, our indoor season starts in January, and then our season ends pretty much June 7th. So, but after that, there's a lot of games that you can kind of get these youth involved in, and that's definitely what we need to go to. But back to Oklahoma City. What a great turnout that was. And I need to kind of verify. I cannot remember the AD out there, the name, so I apologize. Make sure you guys get me the information. In the future, if you have a games coming up, if it's 6 weeks out, I would love to have a, I don't know, a 30-second video clip of, what's going on, the name of the event, the place, the time, how many athletes you have, or registration spots you have open. Like, let's work together. This is not a podcast where I'm trying to make money. I don't want any money from this. Any money that I make off this podcast is going to go back into the sport. I'll start, I don't know, sponsoring athletes, an amateur athlete that's trying to go pro. I'll pay for his way to get into a game or something. I don't want money off of this. I'm a firearm instructor. I travel the country doing firearm related things. I make good money. I need to grow this sport because it's a passion of mine. So let's just make sure that we're reaching out and doing what we can for these guys. Highland Islands, man, it's another backyard rebellion game, or I don't know if it's officially a backyard rebellion game, but it's a Danny Webster ran event. I'm a huge fan of him. You guys have heard him on the show. You've heard me talk about him, and they had some stat classes. I don't know if I'm allowed to give out rewards, but the amateur men had just a fantastic showing. Jonathan Wayrich, he was stacked in the amateur men, but my boy from Tennessee, Andrew Elliott, he was in there. Who, if we could give out awards, could be amateur of the year. He's had a hell of a lot of growth. He went from not seeing the podium at the beginning of the year to not only winning multiple events, but I believe finally getting to the top of the podium. I need to verify that with him. But that's stuff we should be doing. We should be highlighting these amateurs that are kicking ass, or taking an ass kicking in the beginning of the year and still powering through and getting first place. But that goes back to the overall, body of work, or governing body. We don't have one governing body. So do we do that as a podcast? Do we say, hey, we're giving out this, this award to this individual because, hey, here's your certificate. Rally the Tartans, Amateur of the Year. Is that something we can even do? I mean, I assume we can. I normally do things until people tell me, hey, you're not allowed to do that. There's a whole political side that everything is legal. Some things just with a fee, but that's a whole nother conversation. Just to stir the pot, because I guess this episode is just going to be stirring the pot, is what some people will see. I think it's just bringing things to the forefront on what we need to do. So we'll think about that. Real quick shout out, though, to everybody that's been listening. Guys, we are 4 months in. This is the 4th month of the podcast. It's going really good. If I have more than 10 listens, which I have had on every episode, I have just been ecstatic because I just didn't know that I would be that well received within the game. So I definitely appreciate that. I love that. Thank you so much. And we are going to kind of drop into our little sponsor light real quick. And then we are going to get to the meat and potatoes of this show. We are going to get to the conversation about the heated Facebook post of Dave Bean Summers. And I hope you guys like what you hear. Stay tuned for more. Ladies and gentlemen, Rally the Tartans is brought to you by Andrew Mullis State Farm, serving Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana for auto, home, life, and health. Reach out to the office directly at 502-449-4300, 502-449-4300, and let him know Rally the Tartans sent you. Quotes are free, but him knowing he's getting a ROI is priceless. You can also follow Wolfgar Concealment. That's WOLFGAR Concealment. Your leader in constitutional carry, concealed carry permit classes, and holsters. WolfgarConcealment.com. Every community, every tradition, every family has its storytellers. People who've lived the miles, the memories, the mistakes, and the magic long enough to tell the truth. Not because they want to stir the pot, but because they've earned the right to speak. Today, we're joined by one of those voices. 20 seasons deep in the Highland Games as an athlete, a judge, and an athletic director, Dave Summers has seen this sport from every angle. He stood in the mud, the sun, the storms, the backfields, the good hotels, the roach motels. He's carried the implements, paid more into the sport than he ever took out, and built friendships that have lasted decades. And like many of us, he's watched this family we love hit some growing pains, some leadership changes, some fractures, some choices that don't always match the heart and heritage of the games. A few days ago, Dave posted something raw, real, and honest. A message that resonated with many athletes, judges, and ADs across the country. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. And today, instead of fueling drama, we're going deeper. We're talking legacy, leadership, accountability, and the future of this sport. He's a 20-year veteran of the games, a man who discovered this sport one night on ESPN, learned it at Larry Brock's legendary clinic, and built a life of stories that only the games can write. Mr. Dave Bean Summers, welcome to Rally the Tartans.
As the crowd goes wild. Thank you,
hey,
sir. Thank you very much for having me on.
hey, you found your love on ESPN. We're gonna get you back on there one day, my friend.
No, that'd be awesome.
So, kind of talking about that, kind of your origin story. Take us back to that night on ESPN. What grabbed you about the games and made you say, "Oh my gosh, I have to do this"?
Well, I guess we have to figure out the how it started on ESPN. It's when we finally went from three channels up in the hills of Tennessee to a satellite back when they shrunk down to the smaller ones. And we had all the channels. We were like, oh, instead of hey daddy go or hey son go turn the dial towards the big town so we can pick up a station, the big three. Yeah, we was just watching. I was watching ESPN one night. Everybody else was in bed, just flipping through all the hundreds of channels, and I seen it. I think it was in Virginia. I'm not for sure, but I know I just remember seeing a guy in kilt or guy men in kilts, and they were doing like a highlight reel, and of course it was like Caber, Wait Ever Bar. And of course, you hear the bagpipe music, and then it tied into with my mom said, "Well, we're Scottish, right?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know." And of course, I guess it always stirred me. I guess we'll go back even further to Rowdy Roddy Piper, his intro music. And I was like, and it stirred the soul, so to speak. So, and then after then, I was like, then people's like, oh yeah, they got the games up in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And I was like, I must go there. And of course, it was probably 5 or 6 years later. Me and a buddy of mine rode with his girlfriend at the time, or fiance, and her friends, and we rode up there and checked it out. And I was just like, boom! I mean, just attached right then and there.
That's awesome. And you got your start at a pretty legendary event, Larry Brock's clinic in Charlotte. What do you remember about those early days learning the sport?
Well, for one thing, it seems like there was nobody in my area at the time during the games. And of course, you had to go 4 hours. We're geographical oddity, 4 hours from everywhere. And and I met Larry Brock the May beforehand in that November. They did like a small Scottish festival in Knoxville. Is at the World's Fair Park, and I ran into him. He was doing a demo, and he goes, "Yeah, come to my clinic." And this is back when Larry Brock was Larry Brock, and I mean, he was pro, world traveler, world champion, all that good stuff. And he said, "Come to my clinic in November." And I got up one morning, drove the 4 hours down there, and did the clinic, and met another legendary Larry Satchwell. Shout out to him. He'd be a good one to interview, but he's been around. He was a pro from when the Pilgrims came across. So yeah, it was a good time. Met a lot of people that are still somewhat in the games, but most of them are. I don't want to see them anymore.
Well, in 2 decades, it's a long time, man. So when you look back, what moments feel like only in the Highland Games stories that kind of shaped you and got you to this point?
Oh man, I would say mostly the camaraderie, because I mean you can. And then, of course, it depends on if the other athlete or friend was married or single at the time. But because be like, hey, let's go to these games and just load up and take off. And of course, most of those years I was single, and so it was easy just to say, hey, I want to just take off down the road and go to these games, sign up. But yeah, like I said, mostly like the camaraderie, the brotherhood, and I guess technically now the sisterhood. with the women being in the sports now, and I was around whenever that started getting started. But I mean, there was times that a guy had rented an old raggedy van and drove it up from Chattanooga, and everybody met at my house in Knoxville, and there was 8 or 9 of us had went to Illinois to a Merle Lawless game and at the Strongest Men of the Glen, and it was hot, miserable, but we drove all the way up there, had a good time, and drove all the way back. It was just stories like that for throughout the years.
That's awesome, man. And listen, you talk a lot, just in your everyday about the miles driven, the couches you've crashed on, the good hotels, the roach motels, and you've mentioned people that are no longer with us or just no longer active in the sport. What do you think they would say about where the games are today?
Well, I'd say from once again, may he rest in peace, and not many people may know about him. Is Ross Morrison, who was another judge mentor to me, but he was also over grandfather Highland Games, and he'd been around since the beginning of that, so 50 plus years, 60 plus years. I would say, as hardened as he was, or not hardened, but just a hard. I mean, he's a submariner for Pete's sake. I mean, but he knew his games, he knew his athletics, and I would say he would be still somewhat pleased, but probably somewhat disgusted at the same time with how things have gotten, like the loss of the heart of the games, so to speak.
Well, and before we get into that, how would you describe the Highland Games family? The good, the bad, the relatable, before we jump into why we're really here.
Well, it's just like any other family. You love a lot of them, and you put up with a lot of them. And there are some people I love to see every single game, and there's some I'd prefer just to see once a year. We'll keep that on the down low because I ain't gonna call out names or anything like that. Because for the most part, it's not that way. I mean, but you always got your few that just really just get on your nerves, and just like I can't wait, not because usually those people don't come out to every game. You'd only see them once or twice a year, so it's okay. But it's like any other family. They're great to be around, but sometimes it's good just to leave them leave them in the rearview mirror until the next time.
And with Thanksgiving right around the corner, I think that is a perfect analogy for us. We may all sit
Exactly.
at the same table and break some bread, but it's once a year, so we'll put up with it. So,
Then also too, just real quick, is some of these family is like true family. They're more your family than your actual blood kin. So I mean, there's still people that I can call on right now and say, hey, I need some help, I'm in trouble or whatever, and boom, they're there for you.
well, and let's talk about that because you recently shared a very honest post about leadership in this sport. What pushed you to finally kind of speak up after holding it in for so long?
um well, I guess it was the 10 plus years of letting it build up in me, and then the past 5 years it started ramping, basically because it just irritates me how this person that I did post about, and I'm not still going to mention any names, keep it like that, is, but people figured out who it is, and I'm sure they'll get around to that person. Is that I love and respected this person for so long, and was a mentor to me in the games, would do anything for them. But then here in the past little bit, it's just like you're in it for the wrong reason, and it's a power grab. And it's like you can't Highland Games can't be a power grab. If you're in it you're trying to be in it for the money, you're in the wrong sport. I mean, and you should have figured that out long ago. But they had been in the sport for a very long time. A lot of people know them, and or know this person. And I just finally had it. I mean, it pushed me to the limit of, like, especially alongside, I guess, with Smoky Mountain. It's in my backyard, and it's been a bitter jab in my side for 10 plus years now, that the way it's gone, and the way it could have been back whenever I was the AD as Gatlinburg, that turned into Smoky.
Okay. And you've made it very clear that your frustration isn't with athletes, it's with leadership motives. So what
Mhm.
does good leadership in the Highland Games look like to you?
Well, make the game about the athlete, because most of your games, so to speak, is your boards, your festival people have not a clue how the games circuit operates, because the only thing they want to see is somebody turn a big stick, and then the height events, because they have no idea how far you throw a stone, how far you throw a weight for distance. They don't care. They just want to see, or we like to see just big athletes. I start to say big men and big women, but you better be careful. But they just want to see athletes tossing the trees. I mean, that's what everybody's there for. 12 o'clock and when you try to have it after the opening ceremonies, is what people are there for. And a lot of these athletic directors, not all of them, but some of them, and especially the leadership I was speaking of, has let it go. And they're just like, oh well, we're going to do it for this amount, contract you, this amount, and come in and do it, and still do a crappy job, and having crappy judges too. I mean, not with that specific organization. I'm just saying on the whole world, I mean, because not everybody's not perfect. I've probably made some bad calls, and I'll admit it. But I've been around long enough, I can admit that. And if I was a fresh judge, be like, oh, I'm never wrong. No thanks.
So
But I
what?
think I think they just need to do the leadership needs to be more athlete focused anymore instead of just about the money and the power grab.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I'm not sure where anybody's finding money at in this sport. I know I've spent a lot and I'm very new to it, but let me ask you this. What happens to a games or an actual community, our Highland Games community, when leadership loses sight of the culture and just focuses on that power or that money?
They lose it. I guess you would say they lose their soul. They lose their passion for that sport that they once had. That's the way I look at it because you can't be in this sport, and I mean you got to be in love with it if you do love it, that you are going to spend money out of pocket. As an AD, if you don't ever spend money out of your own pocket to try to be, to make the games better for the athletes, I mean, where is your heart? Don't expect money from sponsors because they're not all, I mean, not, you're not going to hardly find, your ESPN, your National Football League sponsors in the Highland Games. A lot of that times you're going to have to spend money out of your own pocket if you don't have that money. And what I'm saying about that is like if you're not willing to spend your own money, then what's the point of being in it anymore? To be honest with you, I
Y-
mean, you don't want to spend your own money. Don't get me wrong, but if you're that passionate enough and you want to make it better for the athlete, you're gonna put not your blood, sweat, and tears, but your finances into it as well.
It's funny you mentioned that because I have a very similar story in how I became a high school track and field coach. One of my I have three daughters, two of them in high school. I said, "Hey, it's time you guys do a sport. You got to do a sport in high school." We had just moved up from Florida. I had been throwing for a little while, and one of the former throwers of the school that held some records, he was the coach, and I would show up to practices just because I am a throwing nerd. I love to throw. We watch a lot of shot put for what we do in Stone, and I noticed he was only working with the best and just neglecting the rest of the team. He would focus on two or three kids at max, and there was
Mm-hmm.
12 kids on the team, and especially my daughters, not that I was just singling out my daughters, but my daughters were brand new to it and never threw before, and he would tell my older daughter to teach my younger daughter, which meant I was going over there to help them. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen great kids starting to leave the team, like kids that had a lot of potential and upside, even though they weren't hitting the numbers right then and there. So I completely agree with what you say about that passion and getting behind it. So let me jump back into why we're here with you today. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned questionable judging decisions and behind the scenes politics. How do we rebuild trust in judging and the AD side of the sport?
Well, and in this sport, anybody can probably just judge as long as you've got some good background. You'll have these clinics, and I've gone to judges clinics, and and if these organizations, no matter who they are, want to hold their own clinic, because they have judges, in that clinic, or in their organization, that's fine. I'm all fine with that. And I've gone to judging clinics. Many moons ago, I went to one, but you ain't gonna learn from just that. You've got to get there and experience it. I have shadow judged, such person that I made my post about. Back to Larry Satchel, Ross Morrison, all these awesome judges and guys that's been around forever. You got to learn from the best. It's just like, well, my boy KO, the Godfather of Kentucky Games. He goes, don't learn how to throw from another amateur. So you can't learn from another guy who's not been judging a very long time. You've got to learn from the best that's been around. But it's just irritating that people are getting this way of got to you got to be able to learn from the best to make this sport work. from the
No,
ADs to the judges.
I completely agree, and I have been around the organization in Florida, the Foundation for Scottish Athletics. They put on judges
Mm-hmm.
clinics. I was
Absolutely.
fortunate enough. I was injured and I couldn't throw, but Jason Perfogli had the Highlander Games, Floyd Knobs, and I told him, "Hey, let me judge, let me do something, let me help." And before the games, he took all the judges aside and showed them exactly what they he expected out of each time, and it
Mm-hmm.
was great because it set that
Right.
expectation up. Because there it is different everywhere. You go to a Danny Webster game and you might have a wing trig. You
Mm-hmm.
go, which
I
is
love me some wing trees.
hey, for
All the
me,
good.
I'm tall. I'm tall. I need that extra space. I love a wing trick
Right.
myself, but that's neither here nor
Right.
there. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the future. What would you love to see changed in the next 5 years for the Highland Games in America?
Ooh, it's like one of them questions you get in an interview. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, I mean, I guess with it, just like I said, it depends on where you're at because there's so many games across the United States, and like you said, everybody's different. It's just don't lose your passion for it. And if you're going to step up and not only just go from being a great athlete or a decent athlete to a judge or being an AD, if you're going to be an AD, you need to step up your game as far as like make sure it's all about the athlete. And if you're serving on a board and make sure that your festival knows this because if it wasn't for the games, it's just a festival. That's all it is. You have your bagpipes, which is fine. I love bagpipes. Don't get me wrong. But you got people that love the sheep demonstrations, falconry, all that stuff. But as far as the athletics in the next 5 years, just make it more about the athlete. There is a lot of award hunters, trophy hunters out there, but then there's a lot that's not because a lot of times you get to the point where you've got so many trophies and little bitty uh, uh, trophies or whatever. You got boxes full of them. You start handing them out as Christmas gifts. You're giving the kids at games. You're there because you're wanting to enjoy the sport. And yes, sometimes depends on like if you're a world's master athlete or whatever. You're trying to get your numbers in. I understand all that, but if you're going to step up and be the AD, please make it more about the athlete than anything. Don't be a power grabbing, money hungering son of a gun.
Well, I love it because you actually answered the next question too about advice that you would give to a new AD. So, if there are any ADs out there that are new to the game, just go ahead and rewind that however you need to on YouTube or Spotify and listen to that one more time because that was perfect.
Yeah. For
But
the
look,
ones in the back.
yeah, or if you've been a long time AD and you got some problems, maybe listen to that one more time.
Yeah.
So, tomorrow, if you could design a model Highland Games, what would it look like? From the athlete treatment to judging to community culture, do you have a picture perfect idea of what that would be?
Uh, Picture perfect. I guess it depends on. I mean, and I don't mean to be kind of biased or whatever, but how the recent World Championship games in Mississippi was ran was great. Probably one of the best ran. And I'm not trying to shout out to the ginger giant Danny Webster because he is my boy. But of course, I've worked with some great ADs in the past. Not just guys who are close to me, but I think that was well ran. I mean, a 2 day event, 200 athletes, how it was ran, it was awesome. But I would say just most importantly is just get there, get your throwing in, and if you could somehow skip lunch, that would even be better because a lot of these athletes are tired or getting in there, and then we have to stop for an hour for this, we have to stop 30 minutes for that. If you have to share the field with the festival, which is fine and all, like your much bigger games, you're just going to have to. I mean, that's just you might as well look forward to it and prepare for it. But I'd say the most uh, perfect Highland game for me is just you show up, everybody's there, you get warmed up, and you just start throwing, and you try to get lunch on the go, and then you're done. I mean, you don't need to stretch out your Highland games more than 8 hours a day. And I've made mistakes in the past, and I would go ahead and admit it. There was one game where I had 25 bees show up, and my dummy butt let them all throw together. Of course, that judge was mad at me, but luckily she knew me, but or was okay with it. But at the end of the day, trying to tally everything up, make sure you have scorekeepers or a main scorekeeper under the tent that's tallying all this stuff up throughout the day, so that at the end of the day, you're like, boom, boom, boom. Here's your awards. thanks for coming out. Here's your T-shirt, and come back next year. You know, and then we'll catch you on the social medias.
Yeah, there you go. All right, man. So, after 20 years, and I guess the 20 years is officially in a couple of months for when you started,
Mhm.
what still excites you to step out on the field?
Money. No, I'm just kidding. The payday. No, I mean it's just because I love it still reminds me. I mean, like, well, people's like, well, you gonna come back and throw, after my injury, or my back was like, no, you don't need to throw after 2013. I was like, no. I mean, I said, yes. Do I still miss it? Absolutely. I mean, would I love to throw? But then when I have athletes ask me, it's like, well, what should I do better? I said, don't ask me. As KO said, don't ask somebody that's not done it a while. Go ask a pro if you can, or at least even somebody that's like a, high up, better class of athlete, so to speak, as far as throwing. Maybe not personality, because there's been several over the years. But I would say for me, I just love to grab my kilt, and I look at Highland Games as mini vacations. And now with a wife and a child in tow, we can go to these cities, especially if it's only a 1 day game. But you spend the weekend and go and check out these places. But as far as for me, I just it's a family reunion every weekend that you go to the Highland Games is the way I look at it.
Yeah, that's the absolute truth. I love to use them as a reason to go visit family,
Yep.
So and plus you get to crash on their couch and don't have hotel costs. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, man, I guess it's the good thing of being a judge sometimes is that that's usually covered.
yeah, yeah,
But
for
when I
sure.
was going back to stay in Roach Motel, because usually, I mean, with the organizations that I've gone and judged for, from Florida up to the Midwest, is they take care of their judges as far as they don't put you in a trashy hotel. That trashy hotel was because it came out of your pocket,
Yep.
back in the day. But as far as judging wise, I mean, I've stayed in some nice hotels, probably like nicer than my house hotels. And then like I said, I've stayed down to like, what was that? Just went ran across the floor. So, what's growing in the bathroom? Like, I don't know what that was, but I thank God we're only here for one night. So,
That's
but yeah, it's a
funny.
family reunion every time I go. Is the way I look at it. And I've
All
seen a
right.
lot of family come through, and a lot of family that's no longer here either. So,
So is that kind of what keeps you hopeful about the next generation of throwers and ADs, or?
yes, I believe so. Is this as long as the people that's coming in that's throwing and just don't lose that passion, folks. Whenever you come to the Highland Games, don't get frustrated. I mean, and understand, like, if you don't think you're going to do any good, I mean, there's still people that's throwing that's been in the games as long as I have around because they love the sport. And I think that's what's going to save us is as long as there's still passion and as long as there's still games. I mean, there were some games that's been either canceled since the pandemic, or they just lost funding, and that it happens. I've been a part of it. Or there was 2 years that was canceled because of one was, I think, was pettiness because there was a power struggle, and then the other one because of thunderstorms. I mean, I understand if it's going to be really bad, but they blamed it on thunderstorms that never came through. It's a sketchy situation, but it's just stuff like that. But I think if you still have the passion and you still have the willingness to go to these games, that's what's going to keep these games alive. As far as
Absolutely.
the athletic part, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, and finally, just to kind of close out, what does the Highland Games mean to you after all these years, the miles and the memories?
Uh, it means a lot to me. It's as far as, I mean, there's so many things I could say. Like I said, back to the whole family brotherhood, and um, to these just to the games in general. I just love them. I mean, I go out. I mean, every time I go to the game, it's always the same thing. You always see the same clan, same bagpiping, the same. I mean, you see the same people all the time. But it's one of those deals of it's in my heart. From that night I seen it on ESPN to my first time at Gatlinburg games to moving on up to actually being an athlete judge, athletic director side, especially because you want to not only that you want to make people happy at these games, but it's almost like a self joy, self uh, thing with me that I feel good when I go to these Highland games. And I've gone Highland games where I've been burnt to a crisp, tired, swamp butt, at the end of the day. And I've gone to games where I about froze to death. I've gone to games where I fell asleep on the field because the temperature was just now. Granted, this was during my break, but I was asleep on the field. The sun hit me just right. It was cold. I was out. And my boy Chris Chambly hollers at me in the field. He goes, I think he's asleep. And they were hollering at me to come, get ready for the games, and I was out. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was flat out. But it's just stuff like that. I mean, there's so many stories of good and bad. Like I said, with my post, I've had somebody say that, hey, I'm with, Butterbean or Bean with these games, and they call me, hey, have you seen my husband? Is he with you? Nope. And then go to find out they were cheating. I was like, oh, great. Thanks for putting me as a scapegoat.
Oh,
I've had,
yeah.
yeah. Then I've had, then we stayed at one game where my brother, who's no longer in the games either, but him and another guy came up to me in another guy's room and put a bunch of Dorito chips in the card reader that we couldn't get our card into the machine, and they thought it was hilarious. And the guy that I was with was like, "Those guys," I was over there like fuming. It's just stuff like that over the years. I mean, there's many more stories, and I'll tell you a story on me and KO real quick. Uh, is So this was probably Gatlinburg, my second or third time being there, not the AD yet, and I had to share a room with KO. And no, I barely knew KO, but he was out with everybody else, the other pros and whatnot. So I was in the room, or had to go back to this room, and they said he's in room such and such. Well, they had put grease on his handle, for the Gatlinburg. I mean, this was before this was what I think it's still a key lock, wasn't the card reader. But so I go and grab it, and sure enough, there's a big lob of grease, and I took the hit for somebody who's going to pull one on KO. It's just stuff like that throughout the years that's made this game memorable, and I still love to do. And it's just, and we still talk about it, even though some of those people are still not around in the games anymore. Especially me and KO, we'll talk about people in the past, and like I said, they're either passed on or they're just no longer around. And these new athletes coming in like, who are you talking about? And I'm like, it's just somebody that we know, and laughing about the good times.
Ain't that the truth? Well, do we
Yeah.
have anything on the schedule coming up? I know in our region here, I'm in Southern Indiana, you're in Tennessee. The games are pretty much coming to an end. Anything coming up here in the off season for you?
Not really. I mean, I guess just still continue doing my training stuff at the gym. But as far as games wise, my next one's coming up is in Central Florida and Orlando in January. I kind of got like three back to back Florida games. Central Florida, Panama City, Northeast Florida, and then now since they moved North Alabama from May to March, right after Panama City. So and then I got a long break until towards the end of May when kick back up probably with KO again.
Heck yeah. I'm a huge
So,
fan
but
of Central.
Danny Webster and Carrie Overfield definitely keep me busy most of the year.
That they do. In Central Florida, my favorite games because that was the very first one I got to throw at as a novice.
Oh,
So
nice.
that
Yeah.
that probably was one of the reasons why I got hooked. Well, my first games I attended was in Dunedin. I don't know if you've been to that games. Dunedin is
Mm-mm.
a beautiful little town in Florida. Even the high school band is dressed up in kilts. So I
Oh,
had I,
see,
I
he
went
does.
I went to that one and then Central Florida, and I was hooked ever since. So, brother Dave, man, I really appreciate you guys coming on. And for all our listeners out there, this is Dave Bean Summers who is talking. He's a legend in the sport, 20 plus years. If I had the cheering thing, I'd put it on, but somebody said it messed up their speakers last time.
Oh,
So I appreciate you coming on, brother. You have a great one. Anybody listening, we're going to just kind of roll into our very next segment on the upcoming games. We're going to be talking about the Holiday Highlander and Clan Kringle coming up here at the end of the year.
awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2025 has brought some amazing games to the community. Many records have been broken. Many new athletes have taken the field, but there are just two games left that are super important to the community and myself. Both of those taking place December 6th in two different areas. The first we'll talk about is put on by the Foundation for Scottish Athletics that you can find at the number 4, sa.org, which is Clan Kringle, Throwing for a Cause. The sponsor is Kilted Patriot. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know about the Kilted Patriot or have followed the Big Stash around, I highly suggest you research them. And if you can't get to the games, maybe open up your heart and your pocketbook and make a donation, because what they do for the community is absolutely amazing. There are multiple opportunities to throw in an open men, open women's, lightweight, juniors, masters. Please make sure to mark your calendar for December 6th, Clan Kringle, which will be happening in the warm and sunny Ocala, Florida. Now, if you're not in Florida, but you're still on the East Coast, you might want to swing over to the Holiday Highlander in the beautiful Hope Mills, North Carolina. Now, the Holiday Highlander is more than just a Highland Games competition. It comes with a mix of strongman. All competitors are still required to wear a kilt, and all proceeds benefit continuing the mission. Now, it is going to be located between a brewery and a whiskey corporation. So what could go wrong? It sounds like a lot of opportunities for things to go right. They have multiple registration classes, and you can find their registration at heavyathlete.com. These games do require a signed waiver, so please make sure you know what you're getting into. Don't get hurt, and have a fantastic time. Now, like I said, they say the strength of tradition is not measured in the hands of its elders. It's measured in the grip of the youth, the young ones who are willing to carry it forward. And when I walk out onto the field and I see the trig, the stones, the cabers lined up against the morning light, I don't just see competition, I see legacy. I see the coaches who showed up early. I see the athletes who stayed late. I see every kid who only needed one person to believe in them. As a coach, as a father, as someone who knows what happens when history is ignored, I understand the simple truth. Tradition does not survive by accident. It survives because someone chose to carry it forward. So I ask a question. What are we doing to make sure these games live on? Not only this year, not only in our lifetime, but what about 50 years from now? What about 100? Well, Rally the Tartans knows the future is in the youth's hands. Across this country, those who run Highland Games are seeing the same challenge. Everyone wants more young people involved. No one is quite sure how to bridge that gap. The Highland Games are more than just sport. They're a story. They're a song. They're family. They are a place where strength matters, but meaning matters more. Yet our kids live in a world full of distractions. Thousands of digital worlds live in their pockets. They can swipe through entire universes before breakfast. So how do we remind them that the real power is not locked inside a screen? It's standing right here on a field. It's wrapped in tradition. It's earned through effort. Without the youth, the games risk fading into nostalgia, a museum piece, a memory, a story that used to be told. With youth, the games stay alive. They stay loud. They evolve, they breathe, they grow stronger than before, because young hands always bring new energy. And this matters. These events carry centuries of culture. They hold pieces of identity that connect people to their roots. And when young athletes step in, they do not just learn how to throw a stone, they learn where they came from. They learn what it means to belong to something bigger. So the question is not whether we should invest in the youth. The question is, Why are we not already doing everything in our power to make it happen? If you've spent time at a Highland Games, you've seen the proof. You've seen the small kids in oversized boots grabbing gear across the grass. You've seen the teenagers standing nervously in the box, gripping a stone that feels heavier than their confidence. You've heard the youth pipers warming up. You've watched the young dancers rehearse steps their grandparents once danced. You've seen clans welcoming families who are trying to reconnect with heritage for the first time. These young people are not the future of the games. They're the heartbeat of the present. Watch a juniors athlete pick up a 16-pound stone. Watch their eyes. There's fear, yeah, but there's pride too. There's that spark that says, I belong here. And the best part is that they show up, rain or shine. Thick mud, hot sun, they show up. They watch, they learn, they grow. I once heard someone say that when a young athlete steps into the box, they're not just throwing weight, they're throwing a past into the future. Every rotation, every stride, every release is a bridge between generations. Some kids never find their place in normal sports, but they find it here. They find strength. They find confidence. They find a community that does not care how fast they run or how many points they score. The game cares about effort. They care about heart. And that is exactly the type of environment where young people thrive. Legacy is not something that happens on its own. It's built the same way a good throw is. One rep at a time. One connection at a time. One small moment of encouragement at a time. Across the country, some games are leading this way. They're setting up mentorship programs where professional athletes guide young throwers. They're teaching them not only to train, but how to think, how to improve, and how to carry themselves with pride. Other events, provide some kind of scholarships or equipments, so cost never becomes a barrier. Some host youth clinics where kids learn the basics with coaches who know how to make it fun. And in a few places, schools are adding lessons about Scottish history and culture. Teachers are showing students where the games come from and how they connect to identity. When kids see themselves in a story, they want to be a part of it. They want to live. Programs like these work because they do something simple. They put tools in young hands. They give them a hammer so they can swing and throw, or a caber to lift. But they also give them something deeper, a story, to claim. And once a young person feels ownership of a tradition, they protect it. They promote it. They carry it. You can't buy that type of passion. You can only build it. If we want the Highland Games to survive, we cannot leave that responsibility to a few organizers or a small group of athletes. This is a community tradition. It takes a community to save it. Parents, bring your kids to the field. Let them see what strength looks like without filters. Let them hear the pipes. Let them feel the ground shake when the caber lands. Athletes, teach them. Offer a tip. Share a moment after your throw. Let them feel welcome. Plans. Make space for your kids at the tents. Share your stories. Share your names. Give them a sense of belonging. Athletic directors. Build youth clinics. Celebrate young athletes the same way you celebrate the pros. Put their efforts on your social media pages. Show them that what they do matters. Because legacy is not about being remembered. It's about making sure there is someone ready to carry that memory forward. When I see my own kids out here running between capers and stones, I see more than just play. I see the next generation of champions, the next storytellers, the next keepers of the flame. Somewhere out there, as a kid watching their dad or mom flip a caber, and that kid may become the next great games champion, our next athletic director, or the person who brings the Highland Games into a new century. When that day comes, Well, we know that circle was never broken, was passed on, stronger than before. This is Rally the Tartans. We're lifting culture. We're throwing tradition. It's been an amazing ride. Thank you guys for hanging out with me for 8 episodes. And I can't wait to see where we take this podcast and make sure it's in the next level. Make sure to check us out on all streaming platforms and follow us on all social media platforms. Appreciate you. Have a great one.